Gets Me High, episode 29. You got me, Al, your co-host, Brad and Razor. We have a very special guest today. We have Selenoplexia out of Chicago, Illinois. How are you guys doing today?
What's up, man? Doing great.
Pretty good.
Hello.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
So today is, you guys mentioned that is your band practice day. Do you guys practice pretty often being a newer band?
Yeah, so we have a pretty good schedule. Our bassist lives in a different state, so
Okay.
it's difficult to get together super frequently. But Jonathan and I, so Jonathan plays drums and I play the guitar. We'll get together normally around 3 times a week for this project. Courtney will normally join us like a couple times, and then Sawyer, our bassist, is able to get out like once a week, sometimes more.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Very cool. Well, you guys released an EP titled Agony. It's something that I just found on Bandcamp as I usually do. What drew me into it was the album cover. I really like the album cover, and then something about like that subtle greenish yellow you guys used for the title, and then the album caught my attention too. I like the contrast, and it was not what I was expecting initially going in, but like I loved how you guys really blended different subgenres. It was like, oh, there's a death doom part. It's like, okay, this is black metal, and you almost got like some two-step parts.
Yeah.
And then I liked at the end how there was almost like a death heaven type part. So I thought you guys really brought together a lot of styles in a really tasteful way. So congratulations on that. It's a really strong release in my opinion.
Thank you.
Man, I really appreciate it. Before we go into the music, the art,
Yeah.
glad that you noticed that. It's this guy, Ben. His IG is Necro Mold.
Okay.
He's an absolute killer. His art is so cool. He's done a bunch of other really cool stuff. He did his shirt for us as well. So definitely anybody who's watching this, check out Necro Mold because he's fantastic.
For
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
Necromold.
Yeah, the album really did. It's an eye catcher. You scroll past, you're like, oh shit, what's that? You gotta click on it.
Well, it was funny, man, because Jonathan, one that came across this guy, and I don't know where I was, but I was somewhere, and Jonathan messaged me. He's like, dude, check out this album, because he had done an album for someone else. I was like, that's the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. So we ended up hitting him up, and we were like, it was probably way too premature to be reaching out about an album cover because we only had songs written, but we were like, we know this is going to be a thing in the future, and we came across it, we were super stoked. So we actually were sitting on that cover for like 5 months of the writing process. For the album.
Shit.
Okay, for sure. And being that this is your first release, that kind of tells me you guys are a newer band. How did you guys form, and like what was kind of your idea going into the band as far as like sound or vibe?
Yeah. So Courtney and I are married, which I think is relevant. So we knew each other, obviously, before the band, but she comes into the band a little bit later. So Jonathan and I knew each other because we were playing in a different band before, which was kind of like a post-rock, like prog band called Death to Web.
Okay.
And we were writing an album for that band. And in between sessions, like when the rest of the band would go take smoke breaks and stuff, we would just play metal. And then like more and more we started to discover, we're like, really just want to start a metal project. And that kind of like was the catalyst of, hey, do you want to go start a different band? Which originally was supposed to be a Blackened sludge band. So when we first started writing, that's more, so a lot of like the death doom parts and the doomy parts that are in the album were like the original riffs and parts of the songs that we were writing. And then from there, most of our songwriting process was coming just from like jamming. And then in jamming, we just wanted to play faster and heavier. And like, I have a lot of influence and background in black metal particularly. So I wanted to bring a lot more of that into it. So a lot of like the trem parts, naturally those turned into like a lot of blast beat parts. So then the music just got faster. And we were at a bar that's right down the street from our studio. And I remember the conversation. I was like, dude, we're just a Blackened Death band now. Like we just need to like faster music. But we still wanted to keep a lot of the parts that we had. And then coming from like a post-rock band, so like Heathen Right at the end of that comes from a lot of the background of like that kind of songwriting, which we still really like. And that also kind of just came from a jam where we were like, dude, we should do this like 3 to 4 minute instrumental part because it just seems to make sense.
Yeah, I think it was really cool that that's how it ended, because it really came out of nowhere, in my opinion. It goes from being heavy, all different aspects of different subgenres, and then you get hit with that, and you're like, oh, this is warm and inviting compared to the rest of the album.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it really is.
that's kind of what we were going for too. We were like, I want you to end it and then kind of not. How do I feel right now? I'm not really sure.
Kind of like a decompression mode. You're like, all right, absorb everything you just heard.
Yeah.
Well, how did you guys get into metal?
I'll go first because mine's pretty straightforward. Like, I don't know. I feel like as long as like I first got introduced to like heavy music through LimeWire and just like downloading tons of like virus-ridden files through LimeWire, and I accidentally downloaded. And this will show I'm a little bit younger than I look. I accidentally downloaded "Waking the Cadaver."
Oh,
okay,
nice.
And I was like, dude, it was like the most. I was like 10. It was like the wildest thing I'd ever heard. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I was so sick that I was like, this is great. This is what I'm into now. Like, it definitely was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then, like, as I started to get into other bands through like skate videos were really like my biggest channel into music that like I still listen to this day. I started to find bands like, I don't know, like heavier bands like Dystopia was in like one of the early anti-hero videos. I'm trying to think, like, I know like Zero or Die and like Bigwood Slaughterhouse had like a lot of like heavier, like more like thrashy punk type stuff.
Okay.
But that started to introduce me to more. And then really where I transitioned, like where I was like, metal is what I'm into, was like Slayer records. Because Slayer's pretty easy to like get a hold of when you're younger. Like, it's easy to find it. You don't necessarily need to know too many people. And like, particularly like Hell Awaits, I was like, all right, dude, this is everything. And then it was just a matter of like exploring Extremity from there, because I just wanted things to be heavier and heavier. And then I kind of like full circled back then to like Waking the Cadaver and like slam brutal death metal and stuff like that.
You're like, let me go revisit that.
I was like, what was that thing like I downloaded when I was a kid? And I was like, what the fuck is this?
See, I know what you mean with that too, because I remember one of my like earlier metal instances was back in the day. My mom would take me and my sister to Borders, and we just walk around, look at books, look at music, and I'd always go to the metal genre because I was a kid who liked horror films, and I remember you could scan the album and listen to snippets of it. So I got a Cannibal Corpse one to start, and I listened to it, and I was like, I'm probably like 10 at the time. I'm like, I don't like this.
I gotta put this shit back before it fucking haunts me.
The next one was like ended up being a life changer. I didn't know at the time, which was Slipknot. Scan that, and I'm like, this I like. Okay, and then you're right. You go and you're like, all right, what's more? What's past Slipknot? Maybe what's before Slipknot in terms of heaviness or speed, different things like that.
Totally.
Slipknot was pretty much how I got into it.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, it was like and again, the same way you did it. It was those CD kind of things where you'd put it in and you would have like a little snippet of it. For me, it was I put in like I saw System of a Down and I was like, oh, this is cool looking, and I put it in and it was like the end of like Chop Suey, that like breakdown. I was like, what is this? Because I played the drums, but I was like, I didn't know that this was a thing. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what else is here? And then Slipknot, and the rest was history.
For sure.
Iowa is a really great like entry. I don't know. I remember that CD in particular. I own that CD, and that thing, like, to this day, slams from front to back.
I can't agree more. Like, you're talking to a guy who has the original 9 members of Slipknot tattooed. Like, they're that important of a band, and I'm sad that like now they're not that same band to me. They're definitely the most important band in my metal journey, but like, that latest album was rough to get through, but
little alternative.
But hey, I always say Megadeth has bad albums too, so it just happens. That's part of the course of a long career.
Totally.
That's definitely one of my entries, like Megadeth, and like, I don't know, I started with my cousins were in like an Iron Maiden and Iced Earth cover band, which I thought was like, the coolest shit ever. And they
That's fucking awesome.
I was in like the late 90s and I was like 9 or 10 and I was like, I just want to be them. I don't even know what this is, but yeah, it led
whatever
to,
they're doing, let's do that.
yeah, that like inevitably led to like a rabbit hole of like Megadeth and like Manowar and Merciful Fate and like Halloween and shit like that. Like really like theatrical kind of stuff that was like totally different than anything I've ever heard before. But I feel like it just speaks to like the nerddom in me that I don't know. That's what appeals to me, I think.
especially like Merciful Fate, how they have that like big presence. You know, it is like a show. It's like a show. It's good music, but it's a great show as well. You know, so
Yeah,
that totally makes sense.
yeah, totally.
It's cool that they're making a big comeback right now, and it seems as if that tour is really successful, and there's a big hole in people's heart for Merciful Fate, and I've been really interested in seeing that.
I love how every person in every band is taking a picture with him. It's like he's everywhere.
As far as like playing metal, when did you kind of start playing your instruments or using your voice to start creating metal?
So for me, I kind of came into it in a unique, sort of unexpected way. So I have a musical background. I played instruments all growing up. It was like classically trained in piano for 10 years, dabbled in guitar, was in like the high school band and shit like that. And I was always terrified to play in front of people. Like it was something I only wanted to do in solitude. And I think a lot of that as I got older and like started working and kind of got away from that kind of stuff that you're doing when you're a teenager and you're sort of alone. I kind of regretted. I was like, man, I wish I'd never like given up on music. Not that I'd given up, but I just hadn't played it. I hadn't kept up with it. So when he said, I mean, we met, years ago and we bonded over like we were listening to like a lot of Doom back then and stuff. And him and Jonathan meet, and then they started the Death to Web project. And as soon as they started talking about metal, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do yet, but like I have to, like I gotta do something because I can't not like, I don't know. So, and I was like, it started as a joke. I was like, what if I like did vocals? And I was just like kind of fucking around with it, and then it turned serious, and then I started like studying and taking lessons, like extreme vocal lessons and stuff like that, and training my voice, and yeah, here we are. So I don't know. For me, it's like I was like, all right, I'm gonna close the loop on that and like come full circle and like get over that like being afraid to like do shit in front of people. So now I'm just like thrusting myself into it. So.
See, that's so cool. You're able to throw yourself in that. You're like, fuck it, we're gonna just get it done. And you have such badass vocals. Like
you do.
How long did it take to train your voice like that? Because you do have so many different ranges, and now that you say you come from a music background, it makes total sense because you are able to go. I mean, like I said, it's got so many different tones to it. The album. How long did it take for you to
find your voice?
Kind of learn? Find your voice.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that. So I started around this time last year. Yeah. I think it was like,
oh wow, that's awesome.
That they started jamming, and they were like recording a few just like riffs that they had, and like, oh, what do you think of this? And I would just like sit at home and like try to like throw vocals on it myself, and I always tell people, I'm like, it's way harder than it looks.
It is.
Like, it's not like you going out there like blah. Like you have to really understand how to hit like almost a certain register. And so I was like, all right, well, before I destroy my vocal cords, like let me try to get some proper training. And it just started with YouTube videos, and then I found a really talented vocal coach who just does lessons virtually, and he was like, yeah, we can work together for as long as you want. We worked one-on-one for, I think I started with him at the end of November up through as recently as like April of this year.
Okay.
And it was just a lot of like doing exercises at home when I wasn't doing lessons with him, and then just going into the studio and recording myself and trying to figure out how it sounded. Because I think too, like, I hate acknowledging it, but it almost kind of has to be acknowledged. Like, I think when you're like a female, it's like, I want to sound as brutal as a dude might be able to naturally, you know? And that was always kind of like I guess like an insecurity. But then after a while, it's like, you know what, it's gonna, like, my tone, whatever that's gonna develop to be, is just gonna be what it's gonna be. And yeah, I don't know. I think what I was going for at the beginning was, what did we say? Like Frozen Goblin?
Yeah.
It was really funny too, because like the first time, because we were jamming, like Courtney was saying, like Dan and I, and we didn't really know what this was going to be. We were just kind of like playing around and seeing what was what, and we knew that she was taking lessons, and you know, it was all of a sudden one day she came in and like we started. I'll never forget. We just started jamming, and she started like screaming, and me and Dan like looked at each other and we're like, "What? What was that, man? Hold on, wait a minute, something's going on here." Like, so you know, it was amazing. So it was juicy. It was really good.
Yeah, I mean, it was intimidating though, because like I'm fortunate because I know Dan's been playing guitar since he was a kid. Jonathan's super talented on the drums. Like,
yeah,
and
I really like the drums.
like being with people who are like really, like, obviously we all love metal, but they both love just like all music in general. And I feel like when you have a really good appreciation and knowledge for multiple genres, it just helps you kind of work better together. And I feel like that kind of comes through on the EP, which is nice.
I agree,
Yeah.
and it's cool that it's like a longer EP. Like that's for, you know, depending the genre, that's a full length release, you know. So I think that like it flows together. I really enjoy the production. I like that the riffs are sometimes really dirty, sometimes, you know, like on that last song where it's really clean tone, and then you could hear the drums. I love the tone of the drums. Did you guys self-produce, or did you guys use a producer?
Yeah, man. So we had there's this guy Nick Ayala, who plays in like 19 different bands.
Okay.
Notably, he's in Break the Cycle, which is like a hardcore band. They're super good, and quite a few others. So he is like super dialed into the scene, and we found him through our friend Crystal, who's with Capicola Booking, who books like most of the badass shows that are happening in the Chicago scene right now.
Okay.
He connected us with him, and he came to our space and recorded us. And it was just this really awesome experience of being able to do it like in our own space and working with someone who's like already pretty plugged into the Chicago scene, because, you know, as you said, like we're a very new band. Like we just started writing these songs last November. You know,
Dang.
just released our first EP. So it was a great experience to get to know people. Nick's also extremely easy to work with, and like he comes from such a diverse background of subgenres of metal. Like not only that he's worked with recording, but like he's in like every genre of metal that there is. He's in some band. So he recorded us, and then for production, we worked with this guy Floor, who's out of Jonathan. Where's he? Holland?
Yeah, Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So he was a connection through Nick. Floor was fantastic. And it's interesting because if you look into his background, he plays in like slam brutal death metal bands.
Okay.
A lot of who he produces is that. A lot of like the best stuff that he's put out is like slam brutal death metal. But that being said, that definitely wasn't the sound we were looking for. Like at first we were like, really, like this is the guy that you recommend that we go through, and we were looking at some other people. They were in Chicago, but Nick was like, no, like trust me, this guy gets it. Dude, like the whole process. Like we are very probably annoying to work with as clients because we send things back like 1,000 times, and like we're also not super musically literate at like describing what we're trying to say. Like our head is a mess of what we're trying to communicate. But Floor was just like super responsive and like super good about like, hey, like here's what I think that you're saying and where are we at with it. And like particularly songs like Heathen Right took a lot of revising and going back, and he was just like so good and like really started to understand our language by the time we got to mixing and mastering that song.
Yeah, it was a really good lesson in like, you know, how to work with producers, and the communication part was definitely like, I don't know, I think we'll be better the next time around, but they were just like, make Chug part loud. like Like, I don't know what the technical way to say this is, but
however it sounds good in your head, you're like, fuck it, let's give that note.
Well,
Yeah,
and
so
that's metal in general. It's like, it's kind of caveman-y at times, so that makes sense that that is a good way of putting it. And if you know metal, you're gonna know, okay, yes, Lamb part chug here. I know what you mean. I know what you're looking for. You kind of touched on it, your local scene, being that you guys are in a big market. How is your guys' local scene, like from the smaller bands, up to bigger shows?
Yeah, man. I mean, Chicago metal, it's awesome. The history is fantastic. Right now is a great time. We just played a show. We opened for Gorgatron, who's touring right now. And I was talking to them, and they were just talking about and I've heard this from other touring bands before, is just how good Chicago is. And it was a Wednesday night, kind of a last minute thing too. It was put up like a couple weeks before we had played it, and like the place was packed. So
Good.
the scene is great. People come out. There's a ton of subgenre diversity. So like, whatever you're into, you're going to be able to find stuff. And a lot of the people which I don't think this is necessarily Chicago, but with having a dense scene, a lot of the people that are in the bands are in a lot of the other bands. So like, we played a DIY show last month where at least 5 of the guys were in multiple bands that were playing on the same bill. So you had like a bunch of people doing double sets within multiple bands. So that's pretty cool too. Is like you get to know somebody, and then you end up getting to know like 2 or 3 different bands through that person.
Yeah. We've actually noticed. We've had a few people, especially from like the Ohio area. A lot of people in the Ohio area, they're like interchanging bands.
Like Sanguis Sugabog, how they're like Sanguis Sugabogs is like 5 bands.
Yeah. Super bands. They're all badass.
That's like Denver has like the same thing going on, right?
Yeah.
Like Blood Incantation, like almost the same band, and then you have like Caustic Wound and Mortiferum, like all those totally. That ends up being what happens.
And that totally makes sense, just being that, like sometimes it's hard. You want to like make a certain part, I feel like, for your band, but you're like, this doesn't really fit the vibe of our band. So it's like, why don't I just make a band that does this all together, and that's just my outlet for that. So I've always found that really cool, that guys have their other routes to express themselves. And I think ultimately that just makes the scene better, because then that's one more band for another person to enjoy.
Totally.
Speaking of you guys playing live, like how has your experience been playing live, and is this your first time playing like metal live?
This is my first time playing metal live outside of like high school bands. So, and I don't know, Jonathan has the most experience playing live out of all of us, and Jonathan's played like a bunch of different genres of music. So maybe I shouldn't be answering this. I think it's a better question.
It makes sense, because there's not a lot, from what I've heard, there's not a lot of good drummers. That's why drummers are in so many bands a lot of times. So I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun, and this is the first time I've played, because I'm originally from South Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of the scene there is like very diverse. Like as you go up north, especially on the West Coast, like the metal scene gets a little bit more richer. You can imagine like Tampa and areas like that. But the growing up in like, I would say early 2000s, there was a big like hardcore punk ska scene going on at the time. So I was in a lot of those kind of bands. That was mostly the stuff we were playing live. And then as I moved towards the West Coast, it started where I went to college on the West Coast. That started getting a little bit more hard. And, I was in like party metal, like party thrash bands, like Municipal Waste kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so it started kind of evolving into that. And I was always doing some metal stuff. So I was in some projects that were more like, I really loved like Mastodon, early Mastodon, Neurosis, in high school. So like that kind of drumming and that kind of like that style of metal I was playing a lot. And I was in a band back then. We played a couple shows, or I'd say early 2000s, 2004 or 5. But this has been my first experience playing live in the Chicago scene, and it's been really, really cool. It's the coolest live experience as a musician playing in a metal band that I've had was around here, because everyone's super nice. Everyone's, just out there to have a good time and listen to some good music, and that's really what it's about. So it's very, I would say, like non-pretentious. Let's put it that way. Everyone's
Hell yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. Everyone just wants to have a good time and listen to good music.
Yeah. And that's the best. When everybody around's having a good time, you can feel it. You can definitely feel that.
And I love, like, we work normie jobs, and we have, normie families and whatnot. So it's funny, like, when they kind of, people start asking questions like, what's up with this metal thing? And you tell them that, like, it's the nice, like, yeah, the mosh pit, like, seems crazy, but there's, like, an unwritten code of conduct between everybody that, like, hey, I'm here to have a good time. We all like this super niche type of music that not a lot of people understand, so we kind of have to all be together rather than against each other. And I think it's funny when you tell people that, they're like, what, really? Like, the stuff that's talking about, like, the devil and slashing people. It's like, yeah, we're just a bunch of nerds having a bunch
You're
of
sitting
fun.
there hugging a random stranger,
Totally
yelling about the devil. It's the best thing ever.
Totally.
So true. And I feel like, the appearance, if you're not close to it, definitely comes off in one way. But, like, I always like how, like, metal, we've talked about this, like, metal is both amazing, but then also, like, hilarious at the same time. Like,
Yes.
it's kind of, like, tongue-in-cheek and, like, really aware of itself. So it's like, of course,
you can't take yourself too serious.
Yeah, like, we're talking about, like, killing babies and stuff, but, like, are we actually doing that? No. Like, I don't know. It's just for fun,
Absolutely. And I think that's why heavy music is having such a, like, an uprise right now, is because I think, like, bands are not taking themselves too seriously right now. Like, a good example of that is a band that we've seen recently and that we'll see very soon, Undeath. Like, usually the vocalist is, looking angry and, like, hit the person next to you, and then Alex is just up on stage like, I want to see everybody move their fucking ass right now. You kind of hear that at a metal show, and I think that makes it more fun, because it's like, oh shoot, like, let's have fun. I don't want to hit the person next to me and crowd kill. Although I know there's obviously a place for that, but
yeah, I don't. Well, it's funny, man, because I've always been attracted more to, like, the nerddom within metal. Like, I think that's what originally attracted me to black metal so much, which is certainly, like, my favorite subgenre of all of it, is just, like, the fantasy element. Like, the three of us are in a D&D campaign. Our bassist Sawyer plays D&D too. Like, we have arguments about Lord of the Rings lore, like, all the time.
I love it.
Yeah, totally. Like, that's our jam with it. So, like, it's funny sometimes, like, hearing the outside looking in. It's like you said, man, like, I don't do this for a living. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sick. I'm at a dentist appointment right now. So, like, when you have, like, coworkers, oh man, like, you guys are doing, like, this brutal stuff, whatever, and, like, in my head, I'm like, this is, like, the nerdiest thing ever. Like, there are, like, way tougher genres with, like, actually tough people in it.
When I took my girl to her first show this year, she's not a metal fan whatsoever. She's very much Taylor Swift, top 40 type of person. And the first show that I took her to this year was Obituary, Municipal Ways, Gatecreeper, Spirit World, and Enforced. So it's pretty.
That's awesome.
It's
just throw her in the deep end.
Yeah, just throw
no floaties.
No floaties.
Like, before going, because she was a little nervous going in, because she just didn't know the culture, and I was explaining to her, I was like, really, it's just LARPing with a bunch of people wearing black t-shirts, like,
totally.
and people, like, go around, because, like, she didn't. I have a battle vest that I made, and she didn't understand that. And then after the show, she's like, I know why you want one of those now, because everyone's wearing one. I thought it was just you being a weirdo.
It's like, how can I wear a 100 Bands t-shirt at the same time? It's like, well, I have to put all
100%. That's the funniest thing. I didn't even think about it that way, but you're right. It's like, who could I rep all at once?
Totally.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As far as, like, the writing goes, like, how do you find like, inspiration as far as, like, lyrical content? Like, do you do it from, like, a you know, from like putting yourself in a different perspective, like as a person doing something, you know?
Yeah, it's a good question. I kind of just at the beginning felt like a lot of pressure to write something that was like really, I guess, like well written, because I like also have a writing background. Like I used to write for work, so
Okay.
I'm an English major, and so with that, like I don't know, I was like thinking about like what are like all the cool like books and like epic poems and stuff I used to read. Like that's the kind of stuff that I think is like really fun to explore, that I think a lot of metal like still explores. So with the EP, it was kind of like every song has like a different thematic lyric inspiration, I guess. And we
Okay.
wanted to do that because we're like, this is our first EP, like let's just see what works. And then like if there's something that like really works, like maybe we'll veer more into that direction with an album.
Yeah.
But yeah, like our first single, Liminal Dread, is about like sleep paralysis and shit like that.
Okay.
Like wanted to make it really dark and creepy and like express what that sensation feels like, I guess. I know like Jonathan and I, we talked a lot about kind of like essays and stuff that we used to read. Like Jonathan contributed some really awesome ideas for like Eternal Recurrence of the Same. We both read that and we were like, that would be a really cool idea. Less and Less Meaning is based on like, what is it called? Simulacra and simulation. So basically like what influenced the Matrix.
Oh shit. Okay.
There's a couple stuff in there, like there's some movie titles like we're inspired by. So it's just, I would say primarily books and movies.
Okay.
Like
Hell yeah.
driver of all the lyrics. So and honestly, that's kind of like where I'm most comfortable. So I'll probably like stick in that realm, just because I'm like, I say this all the time. I'm like, there's so much cool, like historical stuff from like centuries and centuries ago that like, I feel like can be reimagined and reinterpreted and just makes for really cool ideas conceptually, you know, whether that's through lyrics or through art or anything. So, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I think it is
awesome.
it's so cool that you do have like an English background and a writing background. So you can kind of it does help. You could I'm telling you, it's so well written. You could tell
Yeah.
that you know you've got something there. And now that I know that you do have that background, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. No, and it was more pressure on myself than anything, but I had to like stop myself and give myself a reality check. I was like, 90% of people won't understand what the fuck I'm saying anyways.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't need
also,
to write a novel. Like,
yeah,
it's
also
fine.
like you said, it's you can't take yourself too serious, and it's awesome that you do
Yeah.
realize that, so you can combine that, you know, that
Just
background
dive in.
plus just, you know, yeah, just dive in, fuck it.
Yeah.
And the English background's cool because the only other person I've heard of, which maybe I haven't done enough research, that has an English background is Trevor Sternad, and you know, like that guy is known for having the best, you know, some of the best lyrics that metal has to offer. Like all of those Black Dahlia songs are so well written, and like there's so many words in the song, and he's spitting at a crazy rate.
Yeah, that's what's cool about it. It's like it brings a different element to like, I guess, vocals as an instrument. Like there's another layer to it. Like if you
Yeah.
enjoy it just like musically, that's one thing. But you know, for people who are interested in maybe, you know, diving more into that inspiration, like there's that layer too. And it's almost like hidden but there for people to like learn about if they want. So yeah, I'm all about that. And
Hell yeah.
you know, like fantasy stuff. Like both of us are super into black metal, so like folkloric stuff is really fun. I think I know that was like a big influence for Seder, one of our songs, and Heathen Right. So yeah, just further digging myself into the ditch of nerddom, I think.
And you know what, like you mentioned that black metal is you know a big influence too, and I think that's cool that like, because I wouldn't say that your guys' music, like just for my ear, is like inherently black metal. There's like, you know, shades of black metal where you're like, this is obviously a black metal influence, but like I think that's cool because it's really is, blackened death metal, where it's I would say, in my opinion, it leans more death metal, but then you guys give it a black metal vibe. So I like that, because like I like black metal, but for me, like, I pretty much only listen to black metal in the winter, just because I think it goes well with the cold, which not very cold for us compared to your guys' winter, but I think it fits the season better. But like most of the time, I just throw on death metal, and I think that it has like a good itch. It scratches a good itch where it's like, okay, this is more like what I go to, but like it has this black metal, tasteful way of doing it. So I think you guys really knocked it out of the park with your EP. Is like I said, something I didn't expect or know about. I just found it and I was like, man, I like this. Let's freaking throw this in rotation. Cool. And I love your, like, with your vocal approach. At some point you hit like a very goat whorish like vocal, and I love goat whore, so I think that's awesome, because I don't really hear those types of vocals in anybody else's music other than goat whore.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something too, I think, like for me, a lot of what I was trying to, I know a struggle that I kind of had early on, like just talking about early training, was trying to keep like my clear tone from coming out. But there are like some points where I don't want to say it works, but it almost creates this like gargly kind of like nastiness. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, we tried to like kind of run with that. And yeah, sometimes like, even like I listen to it, I go back sometimes, I'm like, oh man, I would totally change that in the future. Like I don't know. It sounds like amateurish to me, like when I listen to it now, because it's like a lot of vocalists, they're really good at like maintaining a pitch and like sustaining that for a long time. And that's something I think I'm still kind of working on. But
well, you've only been doing this for a year. You got a lot of place to grow.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
that's
I mean,
awesome.
for
you got a good
span
starting
of
point.
time that we've had, then I'm good. We're in a good spot. So
hell yeah.
What is it like, releasing something and then seeing people react to it? Whether it's in a live setting or just seeing somebody comment on something online.
I know for me it was terrifying. I had about, I don't know how many shots before our first but yeah, at a certain point I'm just like, just let go. Like it's gonna be I'm doing this for fun. Like, and we practiced so much going into our first show that, it was like clockwork, by the time we got up there. So yeah.
By the end of it, you were tired of the way it sounds. You're like, I'm done with this.
Oh, dude, totally. I mean, we beat it to death. Like we still do. Like, because I don't know. Like that was something that like we had in mind going in, was like we wanted to have the live performance be like a performance, right? So you're talking about theatrical. Like, I don't know, dude. I think like old Dio performances are like the coolest shit ever. Like, and by no means are we doing anything like even close to that, but just like the concept that I would pull from shows like that, or like Iron Maiden shows and stuff like that, is like, people are here to see the music live, so we should demonstrate it in a way that can't be achieved just through listening to the EP, right? Because like then you should save the money and just go listen to the EP. So I think like the most rewarding thing about some of the feedback, like, I don't know, man, like to be honest, like having you guys reach out and be like, we want to talk, and like looking through the portfolio of who you talk to is just like such a cool experience, like especially this early on, to know that like, because I don't know, man, like we are really passionate about what we've put out with this EP. Like we're really proud of it. We worked really hard. Like we knew that we were doing some things that were kind of weird and could be like, either received well or not well, but we were like, you know what, fuck it. I really like the way this sounds. And I think that these two things can mesh well in the same song. So, kind of the same thing with the live performances. Like we don't talk to the crowd during the show. We really have our heads down. It's a lot of feedback, like in between songs, and like we pretty much play the whole thing straight through without stopping.
Okay.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
With I feel like with metal, live performances is more than half of the experience. It's I've been to rap shows, and I've been to I've been to a bunch of different types of types of shows, and with metal in particular, I feel like it's definitely, you're like, oh, okay, this is what it is, you know. So it's cool that you guys put so much into the live part of it, because it's such a huge part of metal, definitely.
That's
or
the most
heavy
important
music,
part,
I should
in my
say.
opinion.
And they start on time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certain times. But dude, I've been turned on to so many bands by their live performance where like there's just too many to like even list. But like I don't know, some ones that we've seen recently, like I think 200 Stab Wounds live is fucking just like out of this world. Like I will see them anytime they come anywhere near us.
We've
But
seen them 3 times this year.
Yeah. We have 2, I think, actually.
They're fucking great.
The way I put it with them is, and I hate like to sound, to be such a homer for them sometimes, but like I feel like we're seeing like, the equivalent of Slayer when they were coming up, but like our generation Slayer, because they're so young and like their music is incredible and they bring it live, and like now that they're with Metal Blade, like I think that's gonna completely change the complexion of that band, and I can't wait to hear that new full length that they're probably working on, or maybe they even have ready.
Totally. Yeah, man, they're fantastic. That's how I got introduced to them, was seeing them live. Because like I'll go to as many shows as I can in the area, and like they were headlining. It was a show for like $10, like at a spot down the street, and I was like, yeah, it sounds like a cool band name. And I remember seeing it live and being like, dude, like what do these guys have going on?
Blew the doors off the place.
Yeah, just like that in general. I do think that that's important, and like I do think it should be like, or at least for us, like we want to think out like how are we displaying this live. So like to go back to the original question, man, just to hear it like affirmed, like somebody tell us like, dude, like that was super heavy or something like that. Like that is our goal, is to have it be a very dark, heavy, and like not super like comfortable live experience. And like to hear that affirmed, it's like a validation of the work that we put into it.
Well, yeah, keep that shit up.
Thanks, man.
Are you get people who like keep up with releases and whatnot like pretty regularly? And if so, what are some recent releases of this year that you really enjoy and catch yourself spinning a lot?
Yeah, man, I think that we definitely keep up with stuff. The Stormkeep record that came out this year is fantastic, and if you are looking to dig into like some fantasy black metal, that's one of my favorite albums of the year for sure.
I'll write that down because I haven't checked that out. Stormkeep?
Yeah, Stormkeep rules.
Perfect.
I don't know how new it is. I think it's pretty new. The new Jarhead Fertilizer album.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Totally.
That new Jarhead Fertilizer is brutal.
I think that's within the year, so that's pretty new.
Yeah.
There's this guy from Texas that just put out this like cosmic solo death album. It's Universally Estranged.
Yes.
That album.
Yes.
That album
Okay.
rips. Yeah.
I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, album art is
that album with like the craziness. That's what caught my eye too. And I listened to it
Same
and I was like, I need to find out who these guys are. And then I found out it's like one dude, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
That was something I added on Bandcamp. I didn't, because I have a certain way of listening to music where I listen to the first single and I just wait for the rest of it because I don't want to give too much away. And that was one where I was like, I know I'm gonna like this album art, so I'm just not going to listen to anything until it comes out. And like it my favorite album cover of all time is Nails, You'll Never Be One of Us, and it gave me that vibe, that album
psychedelic kind of craziness. And
that was a hell of a ride of an album, because I didn't know what to expect going in, and it hit all the buttons for me.
I was like, oh man, I'm on some kind of like psychedelic space like acid trip right now. Like, what's happening?
I heard the best way put I like hearing the album described is that it sounds like it was recorded on a UFO, and I was like, that's pretty spot on. I'm not
that's good.
That.
That one. Two Mold also put out a sick one this year.
That EP was really good. And then their main dude put out that Dream Unending recently, where I finally got around to listening to that, and that was That was a very cool album. I'm not usual like this year. I feel like is where I've got more into Death Doom, and I that definitely was one of the best Death Doom I feel like I've listened to all year. I like that one, and then the Innumerable Forms album. That was a super sweet Death Doom album. I feel like. Well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say there's a lot of good stuff happening like in Death Doom particularly right now. Like Cerebral Rot is a band that I'm really into, and like they're definitely more like the death metal side, but like dude, they're slow and like they have like super heavy like slow riffs that just rip for like forever. Spectral Voice is a really sick band too. They haven't came out with anything in a while, probably because like they're all so busy with other bands. But like I don't know, we're both wearing Mortiferum shirts as it turns out today. So like,
are you wearing Mortiferum shirt now?
Hell yeah. You guys are on the same wavelength this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll start winding it down. I've just really got two things left for you guys. The first is, how does metal get you guys high?
That's a great question. Well, obviously it's like the name of the podcast, so
yeah, that's how we got it. We're getting high, and I was like, I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, how does metal get me high?
Yeah, you know, I feel like metal is like taps into something that's like super primal in us, like one way, or even just being at a show or listening to the music. It's like this kind of cathartic outlet that you can't get with like any other kind of music. I mean, in my opinion. So I feel like in that sense, it taps into like your lizard brain more than any other kind of genre, and it's just not just the music itself, but like the live experience we were talking about a little bit earlier. But like all of that together gets me high, like that kind of tribal togetherness, that kind of craziness. That's like.
Dude, I feel that 100%. The other day, the Sangway Sugarbug song came out, and I was in my garage. Yeah, Piss. And I was in my garage by myself, just fucking stomping around. Just bring out
like
that
what
caveman lizard part.
Exactly, man. That gets me high. That.
Hell yeah.
I didn't have an answer to this, and then as you were saying that, Jonathan, I thought about a conversation that you and I had maybe like last year when we were first starting to work on this, which I really like. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love just like dumb caveman shit too. Like, I really get excited when any type of music is just, it's like something that I've never heard before, right? Like, I really like King Crimson records. I really like math rock and stuff like that, because I think that like I'll hear stuff in a record where I'm like, I've never heard anything like that. And like, whether or not it even sounds good, it's just exciting to me to hear something. And what I think is so cool about metal, and what has always like maintained my excitement around it, why I still like so much look forward to like new releases and stuff, is that it's constantly pushing boundaries. It's constantly trying new things. There's literally no rules from like a music theory perspective, from like a song structure. You can have like 20-minute songs, you can have 40-second songs, and it all falls within extreme metal, right? I mean, different domains, but like that's all different genres that can be explored. And like we were having a conversation, I was like, dude, some of the coolest things that are happening in this genre, like some of the most like mind-blowing fucking one-of-a-kind ideas are being performed in front of like 8 people in a local scene right now. And I think that's like so cool.
That is cool.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that.
I love how they like a lot of these bands that are fucking just killing it, and they're so young, and they do put out that energy even in front of 8 people. You know, it just shows how much people that perform it really are into it. You know, they're not just half-assing it.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I don't know, Jonathan. I was gonna say like similarly, like just like the primitive aspect of it, like about I don't know. There's something about like darkness, as like I guess straightforward as that sounds, that is very like real and raw, and I really like how metal is just like an unapologetic exploration of that. Because I don't think you find many other art forms that do that, at least in such a way with like extreme expression of it, if that makes sense. So that's what
I like the way you put that, an unapologetic expression. I like the way that sounds. Honestly, it fits very well.
And that's why I love asking this question, because there's so many ways to look at it. Like, I kind of came up with this question when we had Devin from Sangwa Sugar Bog on. He's like, well, if metal gets me high, that means it's a drug. And I was like, damn, like, I haven't even looked at it that way. Like, I think that's cool is, we could all learn from each other, and all through the lens of this weird niche, genre that we all like for whatever reason.
Totally.
And then the last thing I'll end with you guys is if somebody were to come to you and ask you, like, hey, what's this metal thing about? How do I get into it? What are 3 records or songs or bands that you would say, here, go through this rabbit hole, and if you like it, you're gonna find your own way?
Ooh.
Wow. I really wish I prepared for that question.
Yeah, that's a great. Hold on, this is a great one.
I feel like you have to. Well, sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
No, please. I was just saying.
I almost feel like you have to give them like a sampler, like.
Yeah.
So you find your like end of the spectrum, I guess.
Little party dish.
Yeah.
I always tell people, most people don't start with listening to Dying Fetus. Sometimes you just get there,
I guess the way I'd have to answer that, I have to at least start with one that like got me like really down the rabbit hole, and that was it has to be like Leviathan by Mastodon. That is like like I'm like as a drummer, just hearing that like Braun Daler for the first time, it was like. Whoa, this is crazy. So that got me down the rabbit hole. So I can speak for that one, but I don't know. I
think Slayer is one of the coolest fucking bands that have ever existed, if not the coolest band that has ever existed. And like, I think that was the first band that like front to back albums I was listening to and just like couldn't wait to get the next one. So like, and like, I don't know, man, that's a band that like you pointed out like with Slipknot, which is like an obscure comparison, but like with Slipknot, like, their most recent couple records are not, their best stuff. And like, frankly, like anyone who's been around for like multiple decades, like it's hard to be at the same caliber. And like Slayer is a band that I really don't think they have a bad record. And I don't think that they have a forgiving record. Like they've never softened up in their entire discography. And I just think it's like, you can't go wrong. So I would just give someone 3 Slayer records and be like, if you don't like this, then it's not for you.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't like this, don't listen to it anymore.
I like that, because I'm definitely a Slayer homer, where like I always tell people, because everybody knows Metallica's the biggest metal band, and I tell people, I'm like, Metallica may be the biggest metal band, but Slayer is the best metal band. Like if you put in the dictionary a picture of a band that's heavy metal, that's Slayer.
100%.
I probably do like Peace of Mind, just to like kind of give something classic.
Okay.
I'd probably do some black metal just to see if that's where people want to go. So like, I don't know, Transylvanian Hunger is one of my favorites.
Love some Dark Throne.
Yeah, dude. Give him Rust in Peace.
Yeah. Where's yours? This is Piss Grave here.
Piss Grave, okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I was gonna say maybe just like some more like modern like death metal, deathcore, like some Whitechapel or like Suicide Silence or something like that. Because I feel like that appeals a lot to a lot of people for good reason. Like it's so if you veer more towards that heavier stuff, and then I feel like you're covering all your bases and you can kind of like go down each of those rabbit holes and learn more if you like any.
Shout out for you saying deathcore, because I people hate on deathcore, but that's after like the Slipknot, Sepultura, Pantera phase for me. I went to deathcore, and
Same.
I'm unapologetic about my love for deathcore, and Whitechapel is one of the most important bands in my opinion. Like the Phil Bozeman Unanswered video at the Mitch Lucker Memorial Show, that is one of the most important like videos of metal I've ever seen, because I'm like, is Phil Bozeman even a human, or is he a demon?
God, you give me goosebumps.
For sure.
Totally. Dude, I'm so with you on that, man. I don't know. I like it's fine if like you don't listen to it now, but like for anyone to pretend like metalcore and deathcore wasn't an entry point, like that was totally phase 2 for me. It was like Job for a Cowboy and like shit like that.
Hell
Dude,
yeah.
it slammed. And then it was like, all right, this is like the next level I was looking for to get to like where I eventually got.
Yeah, like I remember seeing Suicide Silence live at a Mayhem Fest and seeing all the guitarists wearing, you know, Morbid Angel and Dimmu Borgir shirts. And I'm like, oh, what's that? I got to check these bands out. Or how I got into black metal was I went to a Trivium show in our like a very local show, which doesn't happen in our area. And Matt Heafy was wearing a Bathory shirt. And I was like, I got to see what this is. And that's how I got into black metal.
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to speak with us. Like I said, I really enjoyed your guys' release. And I can't wait to hear, you know, what's in store for your guys' later releases. We put your guys' link tree in the description so that way people could listen to the EP. Do you guys have anything you want to plug as far as shows or anything of that nature before we let you guys go?
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. We really appreciate you having us on. Seriously, it was kind of surreal to even be asked to talk about the EP. So we're really stoked about it. No, the only thing to plug right now is the EP. We just played our last show of the year last week, and we're writing the full length right now. We're really deep into that, and we're working hard on it. We're, you know, more on that later. I don't want to say anything that we can't promise, but we're just deep in the lab in the writing process right now.
Hell yeah. I'm excited to hear what you guys have in store.
Thank you. We are super stoked on what we're writing right now.
Good. And you know what? I don't expect you to say anything because for God's sake, your guys' EP just came out. People gotta find it and let it simmer and, you know, build a hunger for what you guys do next.
Build a hunger. I love that.
Cool. And then Brad, take us away with the plugs, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, Courtney, Jonathan, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Everyone, please like and subscribe on YouTube, Twitch, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also catch me and Al on Crooks and Books podcast talking about the local soap opera, the NFL. So thank you.
Cool deal. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank
Hey,
you.
we appreciate you guys' time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.